People with the New Year's usually go into the approach of like, if this fails, I'm going to give it till March. If this fails, I'm done. The problem is they've already got in the wrong mindset, which is like, I'm going to fail, or by March, they've given themselves that deadline. I want to make fitness a lifestyle going forward for the rest of my life from 2024.
You really have to honor who you are authentically as a person, right? If you love pizza, sitting there and cutting yourself off from that is a recipe for failure.
When we deprive ourselves of something, whatever that is, and it takes a lot of willpower, it takes a lot of mental energy to consistently deprive ourselves of that. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Happy and Human podcast. I am your co-host Dinesh Melwani, and as usual, I am here with the amazing Seema. Look, I am a sucker for British accents, so this podcast is probably going to go for like 9 hours because we're going to hear Kunal talk. Anyways, who is Kunal? Kunal is the founder of a business in the UK called KMAK Fitness. He is my trainer, and he is probably the leading trainer for South Asians outside of India. Now, this isn't a statistic that I researched, but it's one that I probably can tell from anecdotes because he currently works with almost or over 700 people across the world in the US, Europe, in Africa, in all of the places. And if you go to his Instagram, which we will tell you later, he has changed lives. And I'm telling you, he has changed South Asian lives. He has put fitness on the map. And we're so excited to bring him here at this time of the year. Everyone, we've got KMAK. Kunal, welcome to the Happy and Human podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to dive deep.
How is London today?
To be honest, like obviously the time of recording this is actually quite sunny, which is a very rare sighting. So everyone's a bit like, "Oh, this is quite cool," but it's very cold. We call it the fake sun, basically, which is like it looks good in the inside. As soon as you
Yeah.
step outside, you're like, this is not great. But to be honest, London in the winter is like, I think it's better than the summer, in my opinion.
Really?
Most people, yeah. Winter is like, the lights are, everyone's very friendly. The lights are amazing. Christmas, everyone talks about Christmas in London, like historically, is really, really good. So I'm a huge fan of like Christmas around this time.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
That's like
In
Christmas in
this,
New York, except
Yeah.
for
So
like earlier.
no, yeah. Honestly, like a lot of London is also talk about New York being very like,
yeah.
if there's any other place I'd go, it'd be like New York for
Yeah.
Christmas.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were there for a little bit this summer, and it was just gloomy, and like it's that misty rain that's always there where you're looking forward to, you're almost desiring the warmth, but it never comes.
Ugh.
Is that a fair assessment of summer in London?
Well, very accurate for this year specifically
Yeah.
because we had the worst summer, I think, historically since in like 50 years. So it's very cold.
Yeah.
Um, like the year prior, 2022, was the warmest in history.
Hmm.
So,
Wow.
it was really, really interesting. I mean, we were wearing jumpers in July. I think when you texted me and you were like, dude, I'm in London, I was like, worst time, right? I remember
Yeah.
you were like, yeah, it's raining, it's this and that. And I was like, classic.
Yeah.
So we were all looking forward to just getting out of London in August because we were like, we're going to be in the heat in Atlanta. So it's going to be great. And everyone in Atlanta was like, oh my God, I love, and some people did come to London during that time. They're like, this is perfect for us.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it's not. But yeah, like in general, I think, I'd say this summer was the worst from a weather perspective.
No. What's a jumper? You said jumper, and I had no idea what you meant.
I know what it
Sweatshirt.
is.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's like a sweatshirt basically.
all right, good stuff. I'm going to start using that, my jumper. All right, we're going to get in. Let's talk about your origin story, like how you became this. I'll call you an international sensation, and maybe I'm being generous with my compliments, but that's how
Yeah,
I perceive you. But
yeah.
we're going to talk about fitness. We're going to talk about mindset. We're going to talk about all the things to make you stronger and healthier. But deep down, I think everyone wants to know what's the best Indian restaurant in London. So let's just get that out of the way. What is the best Indian restaurant in London?
Okay, this one's easy. I live quite close to it. So there's one called Regency.
Okay.
It's historical. I mean, it's been around for 30 years. So think about 30 years in an Indian restaurant in London. A
Yeah.
lot of Indians only moved 30 to 40 years ago
Mm.
to London. So it's like one of the first ones I'd say in London specifically. It's really well known. We've had, Lily Allen, go there. We've had loads of like stars go there as well. I used to live literally like think of right opposite. I used to
Hmm.
live like right opposite. Before, it would be a very like gentleman's club. No one could really go there, etc. Now it's like a full-on restaurant. The
Mm.
food is unbelievable. In fact, like any American that usually comes down to London, clients especially, we're like, next time Texas, you're gonna come down to Regency. We're not going to Dishoom. We're not going to any of these like Madhu's or whatever in central London. We're gonna go to our local. Like it's gonna be good. So I'll put Regency in the map. One of the other restaurants is called Bombay Central, which is like again local to me. It's from a good friend Rishi. He owns it.
Oh,
Rishi
wow.
Lakhani. He owns the restaurant. We actually host a lot of events there, and he
Oh,
also puts us a good spread for everyone. Usually like mogo and paneer and
Ooh,
chicken and whatnot,
Mogo.
tofu. Yeah, so it's really really good, and it depends on what you want. Like if you wanted like a pure vegetarian, there's also like really good pure vegetarian restaurants. If you wanted like grilled meats, like yeah, Regency, Bombay Central would be top tier. If you want something like Kenyan as well, you've got another one in Queensbury. I forgot the name exactly now.
Yeah,
Worst timing for it, but yeah, those are I'd say Bombay Central and Regency for
Region.
me would be like up there if anyone's good. So yeah,
yeah.
that
You
would be
bring up
those
an
two.
interesting point because I feel like this has nothing really to do with anything other than the fact that you mentioned Kenya. Like my in-laws are from Kenya, and I think the most eye-opening thing for me when stepping into the Desai family was like the different subjis and things that were not
Yeah,
like that's not a Gujarati thing. And they're like, oh no, it is. It totally is. And then you kind of do some digging and it's like, oh, okay. This is a Kenyan thing or a Zambian
Uh,
thing. Like it's adapted food, but it's so good.
yeah, like Kenyan. There's a breakfast, very famous breakfast. We call it mandazi. I'm pretty sure your family will know all about it, but like it's like we call it Indian donut. So you have that first thing in the morning with like
Mm-hmm.
mm,
tea. And like I remember mentioning to one of my clients one time, she's Kenyan as well. She's like, bring that to the next meetup. She bought a boat, like loads of mandazis
Wow.
for me, and I was like, this is quite cool. And if you go to like a like Kenyan restaurant, you can request that
oh, wow.
as well. So like, there's so many. Like London's brilliant that way. In terms of like, we're like a melting pot of so many ethnicities. And again, South Asians, you can get Afghans, you can get Pakistanis, you can get Bengalis.
Hmm.
You're getting everyone, Sikhs, Punjabis, everyone. Right? So you get to taste everyone's food, and then so we're quite. That's why I'm quite harsh as a critic when it comes down to food.
Yeah.
When everyone asks me, why do you never give tens or whatever? I'm like, because I've tried so many different cuisines. It's hard to give tens out as a result. But yeah, I'd say even Mandazi would be elite.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Speaking of food, and here we are talking about fitness, they kind of seem like at first pass they don't belong in the same boat.
Mm. They don't. Um, Actually, we've made it the opposite. So
Yeah.
one of our sayings is, if we ever say no to you guys going out, Dinesh knows this, you
Hmm.
can fire us. So
Wow, I love that.
we, yeah. So one of the reasons why we had that is because the way we coach is not necessarily for like the now. We coach for the now, of course, but it's for the next 5, 10 years. So without us going forward. So like, if I said to Dinesh, yeah, join, but dude, you can never enjoy your birthday, you can never enjoy,
Mm,
this and that, and vacations coming up, but you'll get results.
Yeah.
He may be tempted to be like, yeah, cool, but it's very short term. He won't think about it for the long term,
right.
right? 5 years down the line, he's gonna be like, I completely forgot what they taught me. So like Dinesh could speak on it. He's been to a few vacations or whatever. Like, we've talked about rules and frameworks. And as a company, we don't panic when that happens. We actually
Mm-hmm.
want people to go. Clients may panic initially because they're like, "Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure?" I had a great message the other week because a lady went on a cruise, and then we gave her some rules. We said, "Here's what you can do." She came back. She goes, "Oh my god, I lost 2.5 pounds,"
Hmm.
and I was like, "Great.
So
Our
good.
goal wasn't fat loss.
Yeah.
Our goal was
Yeah.
just to maintain your body weight."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I can't believe I lost 2.5 pounds. So they do go hand in hand. It's about how you frame it and how you can make it work, which then allows them to sustain the results thereafter in the long term.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we could easily do like, okay, it's going to be a 16-week model or 12-week model, and just get as many results as we can. But the problem with that is like, sustainability isn't going to be there long term because you're not including your family, you're not including your kids, you're not including anyone apart from just it's selfishly just you. And then what's the ramification a year down the line?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Has to be
That's
sustainable.
yeah, that's where the issue we find,
Yeah. No,
and I've seen
absolutely.
historically. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes. So good. So good. And I think also it's less about the exercising and the food, and it's more about, and I'll use the words interchangeable, but it's almost like a lifestyle and identity shift,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
and where that you're not going on a diet. And Tejal, right? Tejal talks about this a lot, where she says it's a lifestyle
Tejal
shift.
Patel, guys, check her out. Just in case you don't know who we're talking about, Tejal B. Patel. She's amazing. She's wrote the foreword for my book, and she's one of my best friends. So go ahead, Dinesh, talk about Tejal and what she says.
Her
Yeah,
case study's coming out as well very soon, so everyone can go check it out soon.
oh, terrific. And Tejal is going to be on the podcast in the future as well.
Absolutely.
So great friend of all of us. So and I'll give you like, so I've been to Italy and I travel quite a bit, and within about 8 weeks of working with Kunal, I noticed that it was less about, the worrying about the food and the exercises and the timing and following all of it, but more there was an identity shift, and that pervades throughout. And like, so I had a birthday on Sunday, and we went out and we had cake that was left over, and I was eating a small piece of cake every day. Like, it was in the fridge, it was every day. And then I think Wednesday came around, and I just said to Anjana, I was like, just toss it. Like, we're done with it. I've had my fill. I'm done with the cake. And I don't like how I feel or how I think
Mm-hmm.
about myself every time I have the cake. Like, the cake is there. It's my birthday cake. I don't want to waste it, right? South Asians have this scarcity mindset sometimes. We don't want to throw it away. So I was like, I'm done. We don't need it any longer. It doesn't fit what we want, and has served its role. And I think that is something that I think you've cracked the code on. I think you've figured out how to help people make that identity shift. Do you want to talk about
Well,
that a little bit?
we do the opposite of what most fitness companies would do,
Mm-hmm.
which is we want people like most people in fitness, most people don't enjoy, like, let's say if you're a trainer, you have one methodology that you've gone through by yourself. So for example, if I've done keto and
Mm-hmm.
I tell all my clients to do keto, the problem is with that is like maybe 5% will do it properly. Then the rest will be like, dude, I can't do this because I love rice too much, right? Then what do? And then that trainer doesn't have like a solution because they've only done one thing. Luckily, within our team, we all love food. So whenever like we hate food and we just love chicken, broccoli, and rice, like I love pizza, for example. Like I told a client the other day, I was like, they were like, would you open up a pizza restaurant in the future? I was like, yeah, maybe. If I was done with fitness potentially, but that's how much I love pizza. To be honest, like we're going to do a pizza walk in New Jersey because of selfishly because of me,
Yeah, I love
loving
it.
pizzas, right? But like, I think it's more of a case of like we understand. Like I've gone through vacations, I've learned how to manage it, I've learned how to still be in shape, do photo shoots, etc., etc., while still going through life, and I had to adapt to that because I am South Asian and I realized like I can't be a burden to, let's say, my family because of my situation. I'm like, I don't have rice, and they're like, so,
Mm-hmm.
right. So I had to adapt initially when I was younger, at the age of like 17, 18, when I first started this. And then I've learned from those mistakes as I've got older. I'm like, here's the code, which is you can't stop someone from having, let's say this week's, we're time recording is Diwali coming up,
Yeah.
and with Diwali, it's like we've talked about how we can manage Diwali to those people. We've never told them to stop, because I understand, like, Diwali is gonna be like no protein, so it's fine, guys. Like, don't panic. Here's what we're gonna do instead,
Mm-hmm.
right? And as long as you can do that, I think that can help. So I don't know if that answers your question, but to put it into context, I had to go through at a younger age, and then I had to find the code myself, and then had to give the code to everyone else, which then allows them to then feel like, yeah, I can actually do this, and I can still manage fitness for longevity versus I'm doing this program for next 16 weeks and next 12 weeks or next whatever, and that's it, I'm done. Right. So yeah, that's, I think, where the answer would be.
What I really love about how you're describing things is, I mean, this is exactly how Dinesh and I live life anyway, and in that you really have to honor who you are authentically as a person, right? If you love pizza, sitting there and cutting yourself off from that is a recipe for failure in the
Yep.
worst way, right? Like it's going to lead you down this path of self doubt, and I told myself I couldn't do this. This is proof why I couldn't do it. Versus finding a way to integrate all of those parts of us that serve us. And the one, if we were at dinner last night, we ordered tiramisu, and I normally never ever ever have coffee, but the coffee smelled really good, and so I was like, I'm just gonna have decaf, and I'm gonna have a little bit to complement the tiramisu, and
Mm.
like I wasn't going to get any joy in cutting myself off from that, you
Yeah.
know, in that one moment. And, for
Yeah.
what? Life is so short.
Right. I mean, you make a good point, Seema. I think that when we deprive ourselves of something, whatever that is, and it takes a lot of willpower, it takes a lot of mental energy to consistently deprive ourselves of that. And we all know that around a corner is going to be a stressor. It's going to be a stress event. Like last night, you guys had a little bit of a health issue.
Mm-hmm.
Work might get stressful. You might get into an argument. You might have a flat tire or something like that. And I've come to realize that that stressor is almost like a pin in a balloon that's holding together all of the willpower. And as soon as you pop that balloon, the deprivation that you've been able to hold down and keep under wraps because of pure brute force overpowers you. And then that undoes all of the time or all of the results that you've gained from depriving yourself. So I think, I totally agree with everything both of you are saying is that the benefits come in moderating, not depriving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Understanding what role carbs, cake, pizza, all of this plays, and how that integrates with your identity, and deciding, like, I can eat 9 pieces of pizza subconsciously and on autopilot, or I can eat 2.5 pieces of pizza and know I'm full, but also have, a piece of chicken and some vegetables to complement it, and that will be my meal,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right?
But you've also, I would say, you've also had the pizza. So eventually, like, it's out of sight, out of mind, or you don't overthink about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes whenever you start a fitness journey, the element of food focus is going to be naturally quite higher
Mm-hmm.
because you almost think, I'm doing fitness. Can I have chocolate again for the rest of my life? Or can I have chocolate again for this, like, until I'm doing this program? So automatically, it's that kind of, you're already tense about the program and you're already tense about, like, man, I'm really scared about this. I don't know if I can do that, etc., etc. So I think, um, one of the things we always wanted to do is create that moderation and give someone that wow moment of, like, have that pizza and not gain weight. For them, they're like, okay, now I believe you. But they have to go through that. I can speak about it all the time, but they have to go through that moment of, like, whether they go on a vacation, like that lady who I spoke about, lost 2.5 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, wow, okay, now I believe you even more, technically.
Yeah.
So for us, it's like, how do we create more of those moments for them, but within their family, within their community, within certain events, throughout their lives? Because we know, events will never stop. Like Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever goes on, 4th of July weekend, like that will still always be in the calendar regardless. It's about
Mm-hmm.
how you can adapt to those situations.
Mm-hmm.
And what I also heard you say in not words was it's not about the weight. It's not about the 2.5 pounds. It's not about, it's about that shift in identity and loving yourself enough to have that piece of pizza and also recognize how you can better support yourself through moving your body and the food choices you have and the thoughts you have around all of those things.
Yeah, certain occasions, like if you're going on vacation, our goal generally isn't like we want you to lose 3 pounds, 4 pounds, or whatever. Like, the goal is to be in a state of maintenance. So don't go and gain 5 pounds. But here's what you can do to then stay within a certain range. And then once you come back, you're not like behind the 8 ball again,
Mm-hmm.
right? You understand what needs to be done. You can move forward. And I think that's how we've always coached since the very beginning. And I think that's where, like, the element of sustainability, quote unquote, comes into fruition, basically.
Can you share with our listeners, how did you get here? Like most South Asians, we were talking before we hit record, fitness isn't really culturally a part of who we are,
Yeah, it's
uh,
not.
at all. And so, what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. So it started, like, to me at a younger age. So I lost my dad at the age of 8 through lung cancer, and obviously anyone can get cancer, to be honest. So it was one of those where it triggered me, but then it wasn't something I knew I was going to be in health regardless. After that, as soon as that happened, I was like, I need to be in health. Now the natural path would be probably a doctor, and then probably specialize in maybe cancer, or whatever. But then we moved to England. So luckily, my mom had a British passport. So back in the day, whether in Uganda, I think, or Kenya or Tanzania, like, you can actually get British passports because of the British rule or whatever. So that, again, historically, it made a big difference. So she was like, "You'll get better education here. Let's move here." So we moved here, but I think when I was like 10 years old, basically.
Mm.
And at that moment, education was the only thing that, if you come from a different country, education is the only thing that really matters.
Mm.
um, I actually became a rebel instead. So when I was in school, I would be the one who'd question loads of things. I'm like, why are we doing Pythagoras theorem? Why are we not learning about taxes? And why are we not? I used to be that kid basically,
Wow.
right? A teacher's nightmare, in my opinion. Um, and then I loved one subject, which is it was PE, so physical education,
Mhm.
and sports. Sports science was like my only thing where I loved. I actually wanted to be then an athlete. So by the time I was like 12, 13, cricket's a very big deal in our country, especially amongst the South Asians. So I was in teams, and I was pretty good. From when I was like maybe 10 years old, I was like the best in the school. And then when I went to high school, which I think when I was like 13, oh, 11, 12, 13-ish, I was like the 12th best. So, and the squad is 13 people.
Oh,
So I was
wow.
like, damn, like, this is a big contrast. But it taught me a lot about teamwork. It taught me a lot about like, if you look at business and like sports, they go very much hand in hand. So that was a really good thing. And then at the age of like 16, I wanted to study just one subject, which was basically sports science. And at that moment, where everyone in the community, well, my mom was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, are you sure you can do this? Are you sure you're going to earn money? Are you sure you're going to be able to do this, etc., etc." And I'm also at that age, teenage stubbornness gets in the way, right? And you're like, "No, I know what I'm doing." And then next thing you know, I'm going to obviously university. My major was then in sports psychology. And what triggered me at that moment was we obviously call it soccer over here, or we call it football. You guys call it soccer. I was watching a game, and we have a striker called Fernando Torres who used to play for my team, Liverpool. He moved to another team called Chelsea. He missed an open goal, and
Mm.
his mind, like, and he just like completely shriveled as an individual. The next 6, 7 months, he didn't score once, to put it into context. And at that moment, I was like, man, I want to get into sports psychology, and I eventually want to work with athletes.
Mm.
Um, and then went to college, and then I realized that, like, actually, I know this science. I can apply this science. Let me apply it to my own self first, my own physique. Um, and then I lost a bunch of body weight, maybe like 20, 25 pounds. And that was just through my own learnings and mistakes and whatever. Then I used to upload everything onto Snapchat. Like, Snapchat used to be really popular 6, 7 years ago. And I used to like think of IG stories now, and me uploading like my meal every single day. And my best friend at the time, Saj, and he's obviously part of the business as well. He messaged me and he goes, "Dude, like, what are you doing with your food? Like, it's really interesting. Can you create a meal plan for me?" And I was like, "Yeah." He lost 25 pounds, and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting. I don't know if I want to work with athletes anymore." It hit me at that point where I was like, South Asians, we get help in every other industry, right? If you wanted a lawyer, a South Asian lawyer. If you wanted an accountant, one. A doctor, etc. Like, you get help in every industry. I was like, we don't really have one in fitness. And I
Mm.
thought, let me be one, and let me just help out South Asians, because we are at risk. We're the highest risk in terms of heart health, cholesterol, diabetes, everything to a large extent. And that was it. And then I left, and then I basically worked for another company. And then 2020, I started basically KMAK Fitness from scratch. And then, yeah, the mission is to transform as many South Asian lives, basically. So, long story short, is from tragedy with obviously my dad, and then that was a trigger, and then it was just more to like, for me, I realized like South Asians, we just don't get the help that we need. So that's where it triggered me even more to be like, okay, forget the athletes. It's going to be South Asians are now my athletes, basically. That's how I see it. Mhm.
When you started your business, or today, you have a pretty powerful mission statement. What is your mission statement? And tell us how it came about and what the meaning is behind that.
So it's one person, one family, one generation, at a time. So why do we have that? I mean, I was going to walk one day. It was unplugged walk, and I realized the people we coach, everyone's like 35 and above. Everyone has kids, and one way or another, I'm like, I know we're impacting the family, and I know we're impacting their friends. I know we're impacting, because what would happen is someone's in the journey, they'll tell their friend, then their friend will sign up, etc. So we're like, we know the impact is there. And
Mm.
it hit me one day. I was like, yeah, we are one to one. So we're impacting that one person. We're impacting then the family. As a result, that family will then, it will be generational. And then it hit me at that moment. And then last year we made it official, and the whole team now knows it. And we always, whenever something happens, like, let's say they're like, oh, my kid's now doing, this and that. We're like, yeah, that's part of the whole one family, one generation. And that's our mission statement, and our other mission statement actually is like, we want to add 10, 15 years to people's lives.
Yeah.
Now it's hard to quantify that, but, you know, through what we can do, we know that let's say if the cholesterol is the lowest it's ever been, could that then add 10 years extra to their lives without even them knowing it? So it's a more of an unconscious one. The other one is more for conscious mission statement.
Yeah. And you're doing it. Yeah.
Longevity. Yeah, longevity and also quality.
Yeah. Yeah. Longevity is huge. But obviously, uh, we're at more risk for loads of other things now, whether it's genetically, whether it's, from an environment perspective, whether it is, also our own habits as well, right? Like if you grew up in a South Asian household and they tell you this is the best for you, you're going to roll with that until someone tells you no, or you go to your doctor and they're like, dude, like your cholesterol's, you're going to be medication in 3 months unless you do something. And we have that a lot.
Yeah.
People come to us and like, dude, I need something in 3 months. Otherwise, I'm going to be in medication. I'm going to be in this. I'm going to be in that. So we understand it. It's just understanding who the person is in front of us as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're doing it. Most mornings, and you know what my breakfast is, right? Most mornings, my daughter and son will want to eat the same breakfast.
Mm.
And it changes what my wife does. It changes what everyone around in our family, like our nucleus, does. So we're not having cinnamon rolls for breakfast. We're not having all the things we used to have before, and you can see it start trickling down. And I noticed that that effect was not there for many people of my generation, of our generation, because our parents were so focused on moving to a different country, rebuilding a life. Like you said, education was paramount, right? You've got to find a way to pull yourself up from wherever you are. And that really came at the cost of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Um, is that is that one of the challenges you face, or you see one of the obstacles that most South Asians have to overcome when they start a fitness journey?
That's one. I would also say like the family dynamic is always interesting. Depends on like, how supportive, because community is everything, right? Community, obviously, we try and foster as much as we can from a community perspective, but it's your community in the very beginning, like, the first 10 people around you, they can either make or break your journey. Let's say Dinesh, your wife was like, you're never going to do this, don't do this, whatever, whatever, right? The likelihood of you then quitting early is going to be very, very high eventually,
Yeah.
right? Because you're like, do I carry this fitness thing or do I want to make my wife happy? Vice versa as well. We get that all the time. So I think that would be one of the biggest obstacles. And I think that just comes down to like more education. Like, why am I doing this? Like, is it because of my health? Is it because of aesthetics? Is it because of, what's the main mission for me to do this? Right. And like we have that all the time. It's like sometimes, the husband will sign up and he's like, my wife is not really happy with the way I look right now. I'm like, dude, your cholesterol's the lowest in 30 years. Do you want her to live? Do you want to live longer? I mean, you may want to explain that to your wife. And sometimes they don't explain that to their wives in
Mm.
that way, which is like, hey, you realize like it's the lowest in 30 years, which means, by the way, I get to spend more time with you and the kids potentially on this earth. And then as soon as you hit them that, they're like, oh yeah, I never thought of it that way.
Mm.
Because everyone then looks at it in a black and white view as well. So I'd say, families is definitely a big one. Their own mindset sometimes, and this is not necessarily a South Asian thing. I think this is like an everyone thing, potentially in different fields. Like, it depends on like, are you coachable? Are you not coachable?
Mm.
And you guys are in this world of coaching technically, so you'll understand that, where if someone's not coachable, it's hard to then change someone.
Mhm.
Right. So to be fair, we have that in terms of our own onboarding call. We're very
Yeah.
clear on, okay, are you ready for us? Are you not really ready for us? It's completely fine if you're not, because we can't help you as a result.
Yeah.
We may refer them to someone else when we say, look, go do this instead. But I'd say those two are you coachable is one. Because even if you do sign up and your friend signed up and they've done well, you're not the same as your friend. A lot of people
Mm.
sometimes think they're the exact same as their friend and not
Mm.
realize that actually your friends invested, in other things before. They already have coaching, they already understand the dynamics of coaching, because coaching is still very new in South Asian communities, in my
It
opinion.
is. Yeah.
Coaching isn't something that was there 15. No one knew what coaching was 15 years. People thought sports was coaching, and the guy you see on the sideline is coaching. Now it's completely changed as an industry.
Hmm.
So they may think, yeah, I'm the same as my friend. I'll give me the same plan or whatever, and then you realize I've had people apologize to me like, hey, my friends, I know they're not going to be great, whatever, or I'm sorry, like this happened, whatever. Like we get that all the time as well. So I think if I was to boil it down to those two things, it would be they stand out the most.
Interesting. Talk to the ladies because I'm married to a mom and Seema is a mom, and I've seen fitness be put last, and frankly, anything for my wife for herself usually comes after the kids, after the family, after her parents, after work, right?
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
but a lot of your transformations, I shouldn't say most, but many of your transformations are exactly from that demographic: South Asian mom who's a professional who's working as well and has prioritized themselves, their mental health, and their fitness. I think all of those go together. I think that is, the definition of self care is prioritizing yourself.
Agreed.
What is the message, or how are you working with these absolutely amazing women to have them not only prioritize themselves to work through the guilt, but also explain it to their husbands or their family or their children so that they can feel supported in their journey? Because I can understand, let's say my wife decides that she wants to go down the fitness journey, but I'm not on board or the kids aren't supporting her. Again, it's not going to last very long. So
Yeah.
that's part of your coaching as well. Talk to us about that.
It's a so credit to a lot of the ladies who do sign up, and they're very good at like, I want to take care of myself. There is already the element of like, I'm going to be doing this, right? So let's say someone right now who is maybe listening to this and thinking, damn, I wish I can get into fitness potentially. Um, I think I'd always frame it like it's a lot easier now because there's more inspiration, right? We obviously have loads of case studies, etc. When I first started this, I remember like it was a very taboo thing to see Indian women getting into online coaching or wanting to even get in shape. It was very much like, hey, don't tell no one about this, and it was quite rare, right? I mean, we still get it sometimes where people are like, hey, I don't want to tell anyone about my journey. But what I'd always say is like, if you look after yourself, what would happen? And if you don't look after yourself, what would happen?
Mm,
Just ask yourself those two questions, in my opinion, right? Because a lot of times, like you go through something in your life. Let's say you don't look after yourself, you have a health scare, and that's what triggers you. But do you want to go through the health scare then to get started, or do you want to prevent? So
mhm.
I always would put it back down to like prevention is really, really important in terms of longevity. And luckily now, and like I said, credit to a lot of the ladies who do sign up with us. A lot of them are like, yeah, I'm ready to go. In fact, I see the opposite sometimes with the guys because they may be like, I just want a six pack, but okay, what's the reasoning behind the six pack? Why do you want it? Like we've had a guy once he had a heart attack early in the year. He was still hesitant to sign up. I was like, dude, you've had a heart attack. Like that should be enough for you to sign up right now. Right. So I think I've seen a huge shift maybe in the last 2, 3 years. And I think, social media may actually help with that, to be honest, because there's a lot more, like you can then relate to a lot more people right now. Whereas I think maybe 5, 6 years ago, there wasn't too many people, in terms of like, say, South Asian ladies talking about fitness, maybe in health. Right. Like Tejul's a great example of how she documents her whole journey on Instagram. She told me, I'm like, hey, I'm going to document. I'm like, great, but make sure you give the highs, the lows, the everything. You don't just give the highs and highs and highs. She goes, good point. And
Mm.
she mentioned everything within her journey. I was like, credit to you, because it's not because you're calling it from day one. And I remember a lot of the ladies got super inspired by her journey
Yeah.
because she was very honest and vulnerable about it. So I think it comes down to also that. And on our end, of course, just releasing more case studies like women who are in the same position, that they can just relate and be like, wow, she can do it. I can do it. Use it as inspiration versus like, damn, I don't know how she did it. She probably got a nanny. She probably got this. She probably like people sometimes go into that as well.
Hmm.
So I'm just going to say something here, because I think you made some just so powerful points. You have talked about like the idea that it's caring for yourself, and as someone, I remember with Arjun, with my first one, being really depressed and not knowing really, like not being conscious of the fact that I needed help. It was in a really, really cold and lonely and dark place. And I tell everyone yoga saved my life. Um, and it really
Powerful.
was the single decision to go to a yoga class.
Mm.
Um, if you look back and dissect everything, has really, it's why I'm sitting here today, um, doing something other than cutting people open and sewing them back up, right? Like it's, and I guess what I'm trying to get at with that is, in that moment when I was trying to tell Manish like something's wrong, I didn't believe that yoga class was taking care of myself. I was telling
Mm.
myself I was a bad mom because I was breastfeeding. So in order to make that happen, I was exclusively breastfeeding. So now a lot of this, like, I'm not even going to get into the nuances of the situation because everybody's situation is different and everybody's choices are what's best for them. I'm not even going to go there. But my point is, as when you are, especially I think a first time parent, there's no manual on how to do this. You're healing your own inner self as well. And the idea that you taking even a 10-minute walk outside is
Hmm.
self-care, that is absolutely critical to your child staying alive and being happy and healthy, that doesn't necessarily connect. So I
Mhm.
just wanted to kind of touch on that briefly for any mom or any dad or anyone really who's out there wondering if that self-care is, working out, eating well, sleeping, that is taking care of yourself. So I
Hmm.
just wanted to advocate for that.
Yeah, because obviously everyone has different definitions of self-care. Someone could be like, get your nails done as self-care, right?
Sure.
But I also think self-care is loving yourself at the highest level possible. I think Alex
Yes.
Hormozy says this, and it's a really good, like, it resonates with me a lot because I'm like, what would the highest level of me want? Okay, I would want to sleep like 8 hours if I possibly can. I want to, do this really well, do that really well. And I find that as a self-care tool. So for me, going to the gym is like, it's an automatic non-negotiable versus, yeah, do I want to think about it? Do I want to do it? No, like, I don't even think about it because once I think about it, it's like it's too much into my own head,
Mm-hmm.
as well, right? So you want to automate those kind of behaviors once you're in it.
Yeah.
But the hardest part is to get in it, in my
Yeah.
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
But I think use inspiration. I think inspiration now in social media, it can go one or two ways. It can still be a negative one, and it can still be like some really positive ones. Find positive influences, but also look at the trends. Are people BSing you over 6 months? And you're looking at the trend, and you're like, this. What they said this one month, they said that next month, they said that next month. Have a look at the trend, and then I'd say make the conscious decision from there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think Seema, you nailed it. You know, Priyasi, another one of our tribe here, she is a physician in Atlanta, and in the morning at 5 a.m. she'll post that she's on the treadmill, right?
Mm.
And I'll see that and like, okay, some like one person of our team is up already, right? And I've got it that boosts my motivation to get out there and do something like that. Or Tejal will post that she's getting her steps in at like 9 o'clock at night, and that will incentivize me to go and get my steps in. And but I want to talk about that point, Seema, that you made about not even knowing that you need help, and more specifically to the guys out there, if you see, and let me take a step back, it's well documented that physical movement affects your mental state, right? It releases a pharmacy of chemicals, it can calm you, it can release stress, it can turn around a bad day. It's well documented. So if you see that your spouse or your partner is maybe stuck in a rut, or maybe living the same day over and over, and it's difficult to get them to admit that they need help, and it's difficult to tell someone, you can't tell someone that, hey, you need to go do this. The best way that I've found is to model the behavior,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm.
Is to do it yourself and start to set the tone of what's normal, and use yourself as an example to inspire the change that would benefit someone else. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But rather than telling someone or forcing someone to admit that they're in a place where they might need some help, where their stress is getting out of control, just use yourself as an example and go to the gym together, go for a walk together. Be like, hey, I mean, I say to Anjana during the middle of the day, what are you doing at 11 o'clock? Let's
Yeah.
go for a 30-minute walk. So I got to get my steps in. And then she comes along for the walk, and she's not part of KMAK, and she's not trying to get her steps in, but she's out there on a fall day getting the walk in, and it resets our day. So, talking specifically to the spouses or the guys here, um, you can take the lead, and you can be the inspiration, you can be the example, you can be the hero that you're looking for.
Yeah, we mentioned that a lot actually. Like, be a leader in your tribe because eventually people will follow that, and then you know, at the same time, like a lot of people aren't, they don't think about the leadership element, like how Dinesh mentioned. That's a really really good point. And I think the more you model it, eventually people will be like, yeah, let me just follow that. And because it makes sense, it makes logical sense.
Yeah.
But it does take time.
Hmm.
Well, everyone's a leader, right? By choice or by default. And so you control that narrative, I would say.
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
Hmm. All right, so we're coming up on the holidays, right? Diwali's around the corner, Thanksgiving in the US, the holidays are coming up. Let's talk about getting through the holidays from a fitness mindset or a diet mindset, specifically for South Asians, right? There's a lot of South Asians are vegetarian, some are vegan, and we all, it doesn't matter where you fall on the spectrum or what you eat, we all have a hard time saying no to the aunties when we go
Yeah.
over to the family, and they're like, take this one more mithai, you didn't try my bindi, right? What's wrong with you? You look so skinny, all that stuff, right? Specifically, give us one or two tips that we can go into with the holidays, to make sure that we're not sitting here in January further back than where we are today.
Yeah. No, 100%. That's a really good question. So we have like frameworks and rules that we usually go with, like for a lot of vacations. Now, Diwali is interesting because obviously it's heavy in terms of Indian food. It's like an Indian wedding. I normally see it. So one of the things we do is we call it the one plate rule. Now, why do we have that as like a rule? Is because it caps your calories. It's like think of like NFL, NBA. Everyone has a salary cap. We have the same thing with your calories because it's very easy to have like seconds and thirds, right? Because if your auntie's putting, rice in your plate and she's like, give me a plate, you're more likely to be like, yeah, here you go. So it just adds more. So we have the one plate rule, which is, and what consists of the one plate rule? We want quarter of the plate to be like, you're not going to get protein. So don't worry about protein. Usually we focus on what curry could you go and get, and don't worry about which one realistically. They're all bad as each other when you think about it, right? Unless you get, let's say it's chickpeas or lentils or whatever, then we would go for that. But we're not like, you're definitely going to have that. Because a lot of times people don't even know what they're going to be getting, but they know there's going to be some sort of curry. And then we normally say, okay, if there's going to be rice, go with rice as quarter of your plate again. Why? Because the volume you get from the rice fills up your plate, right? So it looks like your plate's a lot fuller, and no one can then comment, right, and say, "Oh, this person's not eating. What's going on?" And then what we tend to do after that is, I'd want the rest of the plate maybe with a side salad, because a side salad again creates more volume and it creates a fuller plate. So again, no one can comment. Even if you're in fitness, to be like, "Dude, I thought you were in fitness. Like, what are you doing? You're having all of this." But you already know what you're doing. I call it chess, not checkers to most people. And I find that would work really well for most people. And we've done that historically, where there's different vacations like Thanksgiving coming up. Thanksgiving is a bit better in terms of there's like more protein options. But even for the vegetarians, there's always going to be some sort of mock meat sometimes. And having done Thanksgiving in the States back in 2019, I understand like the drinks and alcohol, and it's like you will get less steps in during the whole week, right? So we may say, okay, front load your week with more steps in, get your activities done, get all your training sessions in by Thursday, because we know Thanksgiving is usually on a Thursday. And I know you're not going to go to the gym on over the weekend, so don't worry about it. And that's what we usually do. So those I would say would be like tips that people can actually just take away right now, and use straight away.
What about alcohol?
Yeah. So alcohol, I would always stick to clear spirits. A lot of people actually ask us like, is alcohol no go and stuff? I'm like, not really. Like, you can still have alcohol. We're never against it because none of us, like all of us drink in the team. Bar Archana, for example, she just doesn't drink, but everyone else drinks. And be very hypocritical of me to say, hey, don't drink. When I know I drink. So, for example, we stick to clear spirits. I like things that are like whiskeys are really good and interesting because I feel like it's hard to drink 2, 3 like very, very quickly, right? So no one can ever
Yeah.
comment and say to you like, "Hey, like you still haven't finished whatever." Like you can, I'm very good at this where I can just have like my
There's that.
like you Dinesh, you know this probably on the 11th, like I didn't drink as much because naturally I had like a whiskey with me that
Yeah.
I just had, and everyone's like, "Yeah, he's having whiskey, it's fine." Like if I had a shot and I had one shot, for example, then I'd have another one, then I have another one, and then it would just it would get messy basically. So for me, clear spirits, the whiskeys are really good. Clear spirits allows you to have more. So a lot of people usually like mistake that. Wine to me is like a big culprit because the calories in general,
Mm.
right? So we may just say cap that to 2 glasses instead of like goes to 3, 4, because that's now 400, 500 calories. That just from liquids that people don't know about. Yeah. So that's why clear spirits is definitely one that would work. Although alcohol and recovery isn't great, but again, it's more like, are you always going to be? It's more about like drink on special occasions. Don't if you're going to drink every weekend, then you know you're going to have a problem for your recovery purposes. And I think most people who do get into fitness know that straight away. They're never like, oh yeah, I still want to drink every weekend. You rarely get that with clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But once in a while, of course, we've never said no to those things at all.
Yeah. Well, I know we've all had our own, we're all at different points as far as with our alcohol and our relationship with alcohol, the societal pressures that should or should not be there, quote unquote. That's something that I think we could spend a whole podcast on. But what I wanted to kind of touch back on was your recognition of the the plate being full. The Nesh, and I mean, we were all talking about this before we hit record, which was the concept that we don't throw away food, right? Like we're throwing away a blessing, we're throwing away. It's like Bhagwan is there and gifting us this food. Um, can you speak to that about it is a mindset shift, right? In terms of how you think about food and the proportions and what you allow and all of those things, but specifically for South Asians, not wasting food and being tied to a spiritual, where you are on your path to moksha, if you will,
Yep.
comes
Yep.
like that shows up. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. I think like I've gone through that. I would say like I would get I call it the parental guilt where mom's like, hey, why are you wasting that? It would for us it would be more like kids in Africa don't get this, right? And then it hits you home again. You're like, okay, yeah, I did see that, and because I grew up in Kenya and Tanzania, you could see poverty in the streets. It wasn't like people hear about it, but they don't. When you see it, it's a different a mindset once again you have with it. So I think I've always been then conscious of how much can I then consume as a result, right? So I've always been like, that's why the one plate rules come about, because I've gone through that when I've got forceful aunties, they're from Kenya and they were raised in that manner where like we will put stuff on your plate and you're going to have it. So when I grew up like that, I needed to then start to realize how can I trick my plate versus like say no, 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 because I think as soon as you're fighting that, you become a lot of people don't want to be the center of attention
Yeah.
as a result, right? So I remember learning that maybe 2018 it was my cousin's wedding, and one thing that happened here was I bought my own food, big mistake because everyone was like, "Where's Kunal? Where's Kunal? Where's Kunal? Where's Kunal?" I went to my car. I was prepping for a photo shoot. I went to my car and I was basically eating my chicken and eggs in the car by myself, and I realized I will never actually tell a client to do the same thing ever again.
Mm.
Because and then what I realized is like, what can I have done better at that occasion where I could still have the food and no one even knows anything. So the goal with if I went through that and I was like, I'm a coach, I know what my clients are going through, and it's probably 2 times worse, 10 times worse, 2 to 10 times worse at least, going forward. So I think what I would definitely would suggest is like control the plate yourself if you possibly can. Right? If you can't, like at the end of the day, you know, most people would forget that even you didn't eat the food.
Mm-hmm.
Like we had like a we had like a viewing for like the wedding and stuff like that after like a couple of years later. We're like, oh, do you remember this event? Like it was like a gathering basically, a reunion. No one remembered that I didn't eat. No one cared,
Mm.
right? Like no one. I expected people to be like, oh, I remember Kunal, you were dieting then, and you caused a scene. No one cared, right? So even in that moment, I think even if you let's say don't have half your rice, and someone says something to you, ask find out in a month's time if they still remember that. Most
Mm-hmm.
people don't because they're so ingrained in what they're going through within themselves,
Yeah.
they'll completely forget of what's happened in a month's time. So that's how I would always approach it, because I've gone through all of that stage, and I've seen it in my own family. I've seen it like most people forget very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I love the realization that you came up with of that, how do I trick my plate? How do I set myself? Because that really starts with, um, you know, pre-deliberating how you're going to approach this. And I remember when I started with you, I had three really obvious realizations that were like mind-blowing for me. The first was just the sheer number of calories in food, right? I started
Yeah,
looking at the
Yeah.
calories. I think you said no more than 500 calories when you go out to eat. And one of our favorite restaurants is like a Cheesecake Factory or like Yard House. And I promise you, once I started looking at it, everything was 1,000 calories,
Yeah.
right? Like,
there you go.
just even something that's like chicken and vegetables, somehow they've made it into 1,000 calories. The other realization I had, I thought I moved relatively a decent amount throughout the day. And then once I started tracking my steps, 10,000 steps is a difficult milestone to reach if you're not conscious about it and if you're sitting all day. I mean, I wear my Apple Watch, right? And I can go
Yeah,
the entire day, and I'm lucky if I hit 4,000 steps, which roughly is about a mile and a half, right? 10,000 steps for me is about 5.5, 6 miles. And that's basically two 45-minute walks. And the last realization I had is the impact of alcohol in the decision making in the moment, right? I can set the good intention of eating a certain amount, one plate rule, and then I'll have a drink. And before you know it, it's like the two gulab jamun rule that turns into, well, I didn't have any jalebi. Let's have one more drink. Oh, you know what? I'm still hungry. I could have one more or two more pieces of chicken, right? And in the
Mm.
moment, the alcohol can really change that decision. So, Kunal, terrific, terrific. Now, a lot of people are probably listening to this and they're thinking that the New Year's coming up, right? And we know about New Year's resolutions, and they might be thinking they're ready for a fitness journey. And they may be South Asian if they're listening to this podcast and they're interested in starting a fitness journey for themselves, or maybe for a spouse or a partner. Um, give us some of your thoughts about the entire lead up into a New Year's resolution, and how someone can start a fitness journey around the new year if they want, to set themselves up for success.
yeah, good question. I'd say, what you mentioned about like the alcohol and the food right there. I would always go back to that, which is that's fine because you've gone through that. What I'd always say is like, what can you do the next day? How quickly can you bounce back?
Mhm.
So I think with New Year's resolutions, typically, why do they fail? Is because people either seek perfection, which is if I have one bad day, I'm going to start next week and I'm then done. So I think you got to frame it as like it's going to be an imperfect journey, right? And I think a lot of people go in there with the approach of like, especially New Year's. I don't know why, because we've had loads of people start even in November. They don't think that way, but I don't know why with the new year. Maybe it's the psychology of like media
Yeah.
marketing, whatever. I have no clue. Maybe that's a good topic to kind of go into maybe in the future. But a lot of people with the New Year's usually go into the approach of like, if this fails, I'm going to give it to March. If this fails, I'm done.
Mm,
The problem is they're already going the wrong mindset, which is
Hmm.
like I'm gonna fail, or by March they're giving themselves that deadline. So I think going the approach of like I want to make fitness a lifestyle going forward for the rest of my life from 2024, rather than like I'm going to do a program and then that's it. Like that, I think you got to frame it bigger than the program. You got to frame it as like this is something that's gonna enable me to change my life. We always see ourselves as like we're not the cake, we're the cherry on the cake. We're just going to help you look pretty basically at the same time. But
mm.
the goal should always be how can I make it a lifestyle?
Yeah.
So 2024 for anyone listening to whether in 2024 or whether in the lead up to 2024, frame it as like a long term play. Don't frame it as like, yeah, this is going to be for Q1 and then I'm done by Q2 basically, and that's it.
I love
Yeah.
it. That is so powerful and ties in with everything we, Seema and I, really believe in. Is that mindset is the foundation for thinking better, living better, and doing better. Great stuff, Kanal. Great stuff. Hey, at the end of as we're reaching the top of the hour here, at the end of every episode, we like to play a little game, have a little bit of fun. Teach us something. Teach us something. We're all experts in something, some walk of life. Um,
Damn, expert. Let me go with meal prepping. I'd say because in the fitness term, especially like right now, I'd say the less choices, the better. And it's not something that's like a wow kind of thing. But a lot of people usually with meal prepping, they'll go, I need new things every single day, and they just stump themselves as a result. My tip would be um, create three different rotations for dinner, and
mhm.
then rotate them across the, let's say, 5 days, and you've got variation as a result. Keep maybe 60 to 70% of your meal plan the same, just change the dinner. Because most times, most people look for new dinners versus like, I want a new
Mm.
breakfast, right?
Mm.
If you love eggs, you're always going to love eggs to a large extent, right? If you love Greek yogurt, you're always going to love Greek yogurt. That isn't going to change to me. How many breakfasts can we have that's really different, right? If you think about it, there's only a handful of like few breakfasts. Like you'll get pancakes, you get French toast. You can still make them, generally quite healthy. It's about how you can choose it. So I'd say from a meal prepping perspective, to go deeper, only change the dinners, which I think it will actually help you from a variation perspective and get better results in the long term.
Yeah, good stuff. When I started on your program, I was worried that I would get bored of the food.
Mm,
And I'd go on a trip, and we would eat different things. But then I started to realize, and my brother-in-law actually asked me this. He's like, do you really enjoy eating chicken, vegetables, and rice? And I was like, I don't know if I necessarily enjoy it, but I enjoy what it does for me. Like, I feel
Mm-hmm.
better, I'm leaner, I feel more energetic. And then about in month 3 or 4, I started craving it. So
Yeah.
I look forward to my breakfast. I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, I get to have my blueberries, protein, and peanut butter, and my black coffee. Like that I need. I'm a creature of routine now, and
yep.
it's so good. I love the tip of only messing with a small portion, not thinking that everything needs an overhaul over and over again.
Which most
Yeah.
people do because they're like, automatically anything you do in fitness, you think, oh my God, I'm going to be so deprived of it. But in reality, it's like it's your own mind playing tricks on you. So,
Mm-hmm.
and most people love variations in dinners versus anything else. That's one thing I've realized in my career coaching so many people and, I've seen so many transformations. It's like success leaves clues. And for me, dinner was a big clue that I started to realize. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I do now the same thing, to be honest. So interesting. Learning from your
Yeah.
own clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's always good, right? I feel like we're always the student and the master if we're just open to the idea that we're all learning. So
Yep,
good.
100%. Hmm.
So good. And you guys have mentioned the diet in terms of like eating meat and stuff. And listeners, I have not worked with Kunal yet, just so you know, like we're, all here because we're deeply a fan of the mindset work and the lifestyle of living a healthful, well-balanced life. Um, and I love Kunal that you've really embraced the variety that is, especially within the South Asian culture. I used to eat meat. I don't anymore. But you address that in your program, right? You talk about ways to be vegetarian. You talk about ways to be vegan. As I understand it, I could be wrong. Tell me if I am.
Yep. Hmm.
But you allow for those varieties to be there. You don't have to eat chicken and broccoli and rice every single day.
60% of our clients are vegetarian, to
Yeah,
put it into context.
yeah.
So we have more vegetarians than we have meat eaters. We've also had results in every category possible. So if someone says to me, have you had a mother of two get a result who runs a business? Yes. Have you had a
Mm-hmm.
mother who works from home? Yes. Have you had a guy who runs a business? Yeah, we have this. So we have a result for everything possible, in my opinion, which then obviously gives us more credibility as
Yeah,
well. So yeah, I'd say like being a vegetarian now is way easier than it depends. Like you could be vegetarian 20 years ago, but the goal wasn't fitness. It was just I'm a vegetarian because of
right.
religious reasons or whatever. So now being a vegetarian is like where this conscious decision of like being mindful of the environment. Veganism is obviously an interesting concept, and if it's for the what do you call it, environment reasons and personal
Mm-hmm.
reasons, great. We don't really like I'm not vegan myself, but I work with so many vegans in my life,
Mm.
and it's never been an issue
Yeah,
realistically. It's like
yeah,
it's your choice. Go for it. It's fine.
Mhm.
yeah. So good. So good. Okay. Well, the other part of our little wrap up game on the Happy and Human podcast is we really enjoy helping people create practical tips and stuff within the podcast, but we also like to carry that forward. So at the end of the show, you know, we ask about a charity that, or a nonprofit organization that you would like to support. Um, what is a cause that resonates with you that you would want the Happy and Human podcast to make a small contribution to?
Yeah,
Um,
good. I've
yeah.
recently donated to two. One is in Atlanta, which is Share the Love. It's from Tina, one of our clients. This is for kids who have cancer. It's a really, and she's seen a lot. It's like a ball. Every single year she does it, and we actually like we've got like a platinum thing going forward. So if anyone wants to actually go there as well, we can hook it up basically. But yeah, Share the Love is one. And then Tejal's one as well. Like we had Spread the Joy, I believe. We actually donated
Mm-hmm.
recently to that. So that's a really good one. I feel like those two would be good. I also would say anything cancer related, I think is always interesting.
Yeah.
And as well as that, there's so many cancers, right, in the world, unfortunately. But I think for me, obviously, I've donated to like Macmillan, which I think is I think it's in UK. I'm not too sure. I don't know if it's worldwide or in the US. So we've got Macmillan over here. Um, I've had friends who've also like in college, especially had testicular cancer, so we actually donate to that as well. The ones that kind of like impact. So yeah, I guess I've named a few there. You guys can then pick and choose realistically.
Yeah, no, those are great. And, it helps us learn about various causes that our guests are interested in, helps the audience learn, and allows not only for us to benefit from your wisdom, not only the audience to benefit from the conversation we've had here, but even people that may not even know the podcast exists. We hope that it somehow they can be touched. Cool, really good stuff. All right, last couple of things here. We like to also ask a question forward. We've got this tradition
Yeah.
where the last guest who had no idea who you were or when you were coming on left you a question. So we'll ask you that question from Dr. Pooja Shah. She is an author of an amazing book that talks about two twin sisters and their journey in India through some pretty trying times. And so her question for you is what lights you up inside? What is the one thing that brings fire to your belly?
Ooh, good question. That's a really good question. I'd say, and it's been the same for the last like 10 years, I'd say 10, 15 years for me would be, well, I'd say 10 years. Is to see other people, like the impact we can make on other people, because I see that every single day. So I can wake up in the morning, log into our platform, and straight away see someone say, "Hey, like, can you believe it? I just got my labs done and it's the best they've ever been," and so on. So for me, it's like a reinforcement of what we do. So good example, when we we're in Atlanta in August, you know, we saw so many of our clients get in the best shape of life. We saw exactly what they're saying. We saw their kids and they were like, we saw them like, "Hey, my mom's doing this and it's amazing," etc., etc. So I'd always say for me to see other people succeeding through our mission, through our work, that will always like you can't get tired of it in my opinion. So yeah, I'd say that for sure.
I agree. And both, I know Seema and I, we were in the coaching space and we love helping people. And there's nothing that lights you up than seeing the impact you can have on someone else and from the contribution and the service aspect.
Yeah, 100%.
Your turn. I don't know who our next guest is, and we have no idea when they'll be on, but we'd love for you to leave them a question that they can answer live.
So this is not from me directly, but it's from the book Zero to One from Peter Thiel.
Mhm.
Um, it was in the first chapter, and it's really stumped me. And so the question is, what truth do very few people agree with you on?
That's a great
And I
question.
think people will just be like, "Oh," and it's going to be one that it's very, very difficult to just answer. And I'm still trying to answer it myself. So
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to see what other people answer on as well.
Good. You're gonna have to tune in and see how it's answered. All right, Kunal. This was fantastic. We want to give you a chance to tell our audience where they can find you. Tell us what's coming up for you, what you're excited about, how they can work for you with you. And Seema doesn't know this, but I know that you have prepared something very special for our listeners. That if someone has listened to this podcast all the way to the hour mark here, that there is a gift that you have for them. So
Yeah.
take it away. Tell us what it's like.
So yeah, we have anyone who listens to this within the first 30 days, you will get 10% off. But just mention happy and human, and I know exactly where you've come from as a result. So we have a section, I think, when you book a call, it says, how do you find us? Just mention the podcast. And as a result, you will get 10% off as well. So happy and human 10 could be the code, realistically. And then, yeah. And then where can you find us? So we're quite active on, obviously, Instagram. So at KMAK Fitness. Facebook, add me, name's Kunal Makwana. LinkedIn, you got the website, which is kmakfitness.com. And new year, obviously, we've got loads of case studies from, we're preparing them right now. So all the ones who did shoots in Atlanta and stuff, you can see their own stories and, what they've gone through. So they're going to be all over, January and beyond into 2024. And yeah, if you're in New Jersey next year, come through. We're going to be there from July, end of July. We've got events, and if you're not even part of the team, it's fine. You guys can come and just hang out with the community, see other people within the journey. I think that'd be really, really cool. So yeah, little New Jersey plug
Love
towards
it.
the end as well.